Did you rub my lamp?
1,000 generations to the Nina.
Here we go.
This is not your first time working with Edward.
I mean, it's our fifth film now. We've started working on a series in the first place. And that's where I met him the first time on Patrick Melrose.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the more we work together, the more we've felt like this is working very well. And there's also, it's not only, let's say, a service kind of relationship, but it's much more like a challenging, but in a positive way, like, where you get, you want to solve the riddle in a way, together. And that makes it so much interesting for me. I'm growing, I would say, with every film that I do with him, because he has requests that are, in the first place, not so difficult, but at the same time, he's very, demanding in terms of how the music should be. And I'm the same. So in a way, we are, he really gives me the feeling that when I'm finished with the film, that I found the best solution that I could, offer to the film. Yeah.
And for Conclave, your score is beautiful, but it is very harsh, and it kind of goes at contrast to what is happening on screen in terms of like this beautiful ornate imagery. So how did you train yourself to kind of score for the opposite of what you're seeing on the screen?
Well, I mean, in a way that's ideally when the film is so strong with this imagery and the colors and, the dialogues, the acting, it's easier, not easier, but it's nice not to also put like, let's say, red pomp, like a lot of pomp in the music. You want to have then something that expresses maybe the conflict of the humans with each other, or the conspiracy, the voting process that is very like not machine like a machine, but it is a little bit also like a procedure that comes back and back again, and then political parties somehow trying to figure out how how they want to come together. And this whole, let's say, human disaster, I would say, in a way, that, is a counterpoint to the idealistic religious idea of, taking care of each other and, hugging each other and, love. In a way, I thought these two areas need to be very strong, because then you understand both sides of the film, but you also have a feeling, in terms of direction. You understand, okay, this is the next procedure and this is the next one, and they are in a kind of way locked away, and I really like that harshness of that feeling in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. That was one of the things that stood out to me when I saw it a couple months ago. The film, like you mentioned, it's deeply rooted in tradition and religion, both of which have these rules kind of in terms of like their music and what is expected. Was there a first draft of the score where you were closer to more religious and Catholic hymns?
No, not at all. Never. No. It was the only Catholic hymn that was there, or what is the Miserere, that is, or Miserere, that is in there. That's the, the choir piece in the center of it. But all the other things I was raised very strong religious, so I know a lot about church music, and also the rituals that you have. But I felt it wasn't the purpose it needed something that in a way creates a spiritual idea, and describes maybe the spiritual idealistic idea of, of the church or of religion in general. But it should have been modern and also a little awkward, because that the main topic of the film is quite a more like a thriller topic, or a thriller aspect, and you don't want to get too deep into kind of sobby religious music in a way, you know?
Yeah. In another interview you did, you were talking about the power of arpeggios. And as someone
Yeah.
who dropped out of band fairly early on, can you explain what that means and why there's like this power that comes from an arpeggio?
Well, the arpeggios are, first of all, they are, you know, broken chords in a way. They actually describe a chord, but at the same time they do a very quick movement, and you can actually, just by adjusting triplets or sixteens, or you know, you make the tempo faster, you can create the tension. Plus, if you layer them, you can actually play triplets against sixteens, and suddenly you have like a weird rhythmical crunch in a way, but at the same time it creates chaos. You know, and I love actually to do, you know, triplets against eighth or, you know, 16th, so that you have, sometimes they clash and then they have one note together and then they clash again, you know, things like that. And you can build harmonical, you know, setups like in techno music, or like in a, you know, in trance music, where you can slowly wind up the propelling up to an area where you just feel like where the breath is nearly not, you can't breathe anymore. And then it, you know, you, in techno music, for example, you do that with the bass drum drop at some point, but you wait, you know.
Yeah.
And so this, what I did in Conclave, I would say it's maybe the reverse bass drum drop. It's actually building, 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 and then you do a hit, and then suddenly there's emptiness and silence, and then you have somebody breathing, all lonely in the room. That helps obviously the film so much, because you feel the, you know, the movement in the people, you know, in their, like in their what happened in their mind while they're going through the process of who is the next leader.
Hmm. Yeah. I would never have thought to, as someone who's not great with music, to compare your score to trance EDM music, but now I'm like, I see it fully.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Most of the score selections are about like a minute and a half to 2 minutes, but then you have one called "You Should Be Careful" that's around 4 minutes. So I was wondering if you
Hmm.
could talk about that scene that accompanies it and why it warranted a longer piece of music.
Because the "You Should Be Careful" is a very long stretch of different scenes melt into each other, and I think it was even longer in the beginning, because that, you know, they have this kind of like a conversation, longer conversation about, let's say, not mistrust, but there's a, you know, and that needed already music that creates tension underneath it. But then we move onwards, and that, I think that was one of the few scenes where we had the feeling we want to gap bridge into the next scene directly. So what you can say is maybe it's two cues,
Mm.
you know, melt into each other, because mostly the cues are 2 minutes long. I think the longest, obviously, is the last,
Mhm.
the credit cue, which I feel is belonging to the story, because it expresses in a way the last mood you have when the film is finished, you know. But yeah, that's the main reason why that is longer.
Yeah. You did a lot of the score on the, I'm probably not going to pronounce this instrument correctly, the crystal bachet. Is that right?
Yeah, Crystal Bachet.
Bachet. Um,
Yeah,
so how did you, but it was an instrument that was unfamiliar to you prior to this score. So how did
yeah.
you build an entire score around an instrument that you weren't very familiar with?
Well, I researched. I saw it once when I was younger, and I played a concert in London at the Barbican. I played a show, and there was one guy. His name is Thomas Bloch. He played different instruments, like very awkward instruments, like the glass harp. He played the crystal bachet. He played another instrument called the onde matinaux, which is a electronic instrument. And they were all like instruments where I've never heard about, and you know, I was not even familiar with it. And then I was already there, quite thrilled that there are instruments out there that I don't know. And then with this film specifically, when I was thinking about spiritual music and ethereal layers of music, I thought about like glass instruments. So I was looking at the glass harp first, and then the crystal bachet appeared, and I felt like, oh, I think I've seen that, and I think that was maybe the more interesting instrument for me because it sounds like a weird, awkward synthesizer at sometimes. It starts very crystally, and then it begins suddenly to create these resonances that are otherworldly in a way. And so I invited a guy from Paris called Marc Chouarin. He came to my studio with the crystal bachet, and he set it up, and we put some mics on there, and then we recorded a couple of themes. I sent that to Edward, and Edward said, "Oh my God, this is bloody amazing. I really would love to use some of that. I don't know where, but I really would like to use it." And so slowly this crystal bachet was getting into the replacement of these, or it was in a way standing for the idealistic religious approach.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really did love the score, and I was a big fan of the movie too.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
have a wonderful Christmas.
You too.